As usual, I wrapped it in foil and placed it gently in my old wicker basket, ready to bring to Paul's house. Then my phone lit up with a message from Diana. "Don't bring anything. We don't eat your food." No greeting, no thank you, just that. I stood there with the warm cake cooling in my hands and realized I wasn't just being left out of the meal. I was being erased. This wasn't the first time Diana's words stung like this, but something shifted in me. Perhaps it was the fact she didn't even bother to pretend, or maybe it was the cake itself. 38 years of tradition, brushed aside like a used napkin. I sat at the kitchen table, placing the cake between my arms like a wounded creature, and read the message again. Of course, Paul didn't send it. He never does. He lets her speak for them both, as he's done for years, and I've allowed it. I've smiled when Diana rearranged my flowers, nodded when she suggested I shouldn't bake too much sugar for the grandkids, and stayed quiet when she left my name off the invitations. I thought I was maintaining peace, but peace doesn't feel like being ignored, and it doesn't taste like silence. The house was too quiet. The ticking kitchen clock was as loud as a metronome in my chest. I considered calling Nancy next door, but what would I say? That I baked a cake no one wants? That my daughter-in-law speaks to me like I'm the help? I remained seated, staring at the chocolate cake and thinking of all the ones before it. The birthday cake with the fire truck when Paul was 5, the one with M&Ms on top when he turned 10, and the vanilla mistake I made when he was 15, which he ate 2 slices of anyway. He used to say, "I made the best cakes in the world." I guess a woman gradually becomes invisible. First, it's her opinions that fade, then her voice, then the meals she prepares. Before long, you find yourself in your own kitchen, pondering whether appearing would make you the antagonist in your son's life. I didn't cry, though I felt the prickling behind my eyes. Instead, I cut a piece of cake and ate it alone, still warm, still soft, still mine, which seemed significant. Then I retrieved the drawer where I store all the birthday cards Paul has ever given me, neatly tied with a ribbon. The last 5 were signed only by him, with nothing from Diana. Last year's was a printed card with a generic poem and just Paul's name underneath. I stood up, put the remaining cake in the fridge, and removed my apron. Enough pretending, enough diminishing myself so others could seem bigger. If my cake isn't welcome, maybe neither am I, and perhaps that's not a bad thing. I reach for the notebook I keep next to the stove, where I jot down important things, recipes, phone numbers, simple truths. On a fresh page, I wrote, "They don't eat my food, but they still take my money." That's what this has been about, hasn't it? Every month, without fail, the quiet withdrawals. Ben's school trip needs funding. The roof needs repairs, just until payday. And I've agreed every time, no questions, believing that giving meant loving. But now I'm reconsidering. Maybe it's time to love myself a bit more, to stop feeding those who'd rather go hungry than sit with me. So I sat at the same table where Paul used to do his homework, where we shared cocoa in the winter and planned my next steps. No more giving without asking. No more being polite while being erased. I'm 79 years old, and I'm done baking silence into every bite. Tomorrow, I'll go to the bank. The next morning, I ironed my blouse, the pale blue one I hadn't worn in over a year. too crisp, too formal for grocery trips or tranquil afternoons, yet it seemed appropriate for my task. Pressed cotton carries a sense of dignity, even if unnoticed by anyone except the bank teller. The air was filled with the scent of air conditioning and disappointment. A young man at the counter greeted me with a broad smile, the kind reserved for older women, friendly, loud, slightly patronizing. I handed him my account number without returning the smile. He tapped on his keyboard and then asked, "How can I assist you today, Mrs. Ellis?" "I'd like to review my automatic transfers," I replied. He blinked. "To your son's household, correct?" "Correct." Since Paul launched his small landscaping venture 5 years ago, he requested help for just a few months. Those months had stretched into years. Diana never asked, she simply expected, and I maintained the arrangement quietly, just as I kept the lawn neat and the pantry full. "They're under Ellis Family Monthly Support," the teller said, scrolling. "Would you like to adjust the amount?" "I'd like to stop them entirely," I responded. He hesitated. "You want to cancel the transfers?" "I want to stop paying for people who won't eat my food." He didn't laugh, well-trained, only clicked his mouse and nodded. "It'll take effect next month." I nodded in return. "That's fine." I walked home slowly, listening to the leaves rustling in the wind. I hadn't informed anyone about this decision. There would be calls, texts, confusion. Yet, for the first time in years, the thought didn't make me anxious. It made me feel lighter. At home, I opened the bottom drawer of my dresser, retrieving the folder marked Paul and Diana. Inside were printed statements, check copies, and handwritten notes of old text messages. I added a fresh note at the top. March 18th, canceled monthly support, $650 month, no discussion, no guilt. I placed the folder back, made tea, and sat by the window, watching the neighborhood awaken. Nancy, across the street, waved while trimming her roses, and I waved back. Her daughter was visiting again, third time this month. I wondered if they were baking together as my phone. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Paul. "Hey, Mom, did the bank mention any issues? Got a notice about the transfer?" "No." "Hi, Mom," or "How are you?" Just straight to the point. I didn't respond. At 12:32, Diana called, but I let it ring, then turned off the phone and left it in the kitchen drawer. Let them wonder. Let them feel the silence I've known for years. It was time they experienced it too. Around 2, I strolled to Thelma's flower shop, always bright and filled with the scent of lilies. Thelma smiled when she saw me. "Mrs. Ellis, it's been ages since you've been here." I replied, "I'd like a bouquet delivered to myself." She laughed. "To yourself? Bright colors, maybe ranunculus, tulips, something that doesn't apologize for taking up space." Thelma smiled warmly. "I can do that." She didn't ask why, showing a kindness I wish Diana could understand, the kind that doesn't pry. I paid in cash, left a tip, and walked home with sunshine warming my back. When I opened the door, the house was quiet, but not empty. I reheated leftover cake and enjoyed another slice, still rich, still soft, still mine. I pondered what else I might change. The will, for one, and the deed to this house. I thought about Ben, my gentle, awkward grandson who always helped with groceries and was the only one who thanked me for pie with a hug. There was more to do, but not today. Today, I'd embrace this silence, not the one they forced on me, but the one I chose. There's strength in not responding. The next morning, I laid out every envelope they ever sent, not birthday cards. Those I kept tied with a ribbon, but the ones marked urgent or just this once, requests for help cloaked in pleasantries. There was one from 3 years ago when Ben needed a calculator for AP math. I wrote a check for $120, later discovering it went toward Diana's new handbag. I started a list. Ellis Family Financial History, March 2015, $3,000 seed money for Paul's business. December 2016, $800 for Diana's emergency plumbing. Instagram showed them at a spa in April 2018, $200. Ben's school trip in July 2019, $1,500. Car repairs in November 2020, $250. Groceries in February 2021, $500. A surprise for Diana's birthday in May 2022, $600, just until the next paycheck. Altogether, $11,025 over a decade. I never said no. Yet this year, I was told not to bring cake. It wasn't the numbers that hurt me. I would have given twice that without hesitation if I felt valued. But when love becomes a silent duty and giving is the only language you're allowed to use, it empties you. That afternoon, I contacted my lawyer. Mrs. Ellis, it's been a while, he said, a man in his 50s with a warm voice and too many pens in his pocket. Still keeping things in order? Yes, I answered, but the order's changing. I scheduled an appointment for Thursday. That evening, the silence changed. I didn't just endure it. I embraced it. I lit candles, baked scones, just for myself, and wrote a letter to myself, signing it like a friend would. You're not invisible, Maggie. You're just missing. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. On Wednesday, Paul arrived at my door unannounced, just him and his nervous knock. I didn't pretend to be surprised. Mom, he started, eyes shifting like he was 12 again, about to confess breaking the window. Can we talk? I opened the door wider, but didn't step aside. Is Diana with you? No, he replied quickly. She's at work. I let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch with his hands clasped. Got your message, he said. I didn't send one. He paused. Right. I meant about the money from the bank. I just wanted to see if everything's okay. I sat across from him. No cake between us this time, and everything seemed fine. I simply chose to stop giving to people who don't want anything else from me. He glanced down. It's not like that, he said, swallowing hard. Diana didn't mean anything by that message. She's just very particular about people or food. He didn't respond. I was going to bring the cake. As always, I continued, keeping my voice steady. Same recipe, same care, but it's not the cake, Paul. It's that no one wanted me there. He flinched. That's not true, he protested, but no one corrected her. You could have said, Mom, please come anyway. Or you could have called. He rubbed his hands together. Things have been tense. And I'm the tension? I asked. No. He shook his head. It's just Diana's family celebrates differently. Formal dinners, assigned seats. She doesn't like surprises. I smiled bitterly. 38 years of tradition, and I'm a surprise. He sighed. We didn't mean to hurt you. But you did, I replied. He looked up. Are you cutting us off? I'm adjusting the terms of our relationship, I said. Silence fell again, heavier this time. Paul stood uncertain. I'll talk to Diana. You do that, I replied. Meanwhile, I'll talk to my lawyer. He blinked. Lawyer? For the house, the will, things I should have updated years ago. He tried to smile. You don't need to do anything drastic. Ankerke, Eitris amo en kruin. Emsher kreis gauss. I kergina there's ang Au ge.
I'm just done playing a role I didn't audition for. He didn't hug me when he left, just nodded and walked out. A man more confused than remorseful. When the door clicked shut, I stood for a moment, letting the silence settle around me again. But now, it wasn't silence. It was space. And it was mine. Thursday was colder than expected for late March. I wore my good coat, the grey wool one, with the velvet collar George bought me in '92. It still fit, though the pockets sagged a little now. I put my notebook in one pocket and my gloves in the other. At 79, you learn to keep things close. The law office was above a dentist, nestled between a nail salon and a coffee shop that played jazz too loudly. The stairs creaked under my weight, but no one offered to help.
Them up, although I didn't need the assistance. Mr. Kent greeted me with his usual firm handshake, as if to remind me that I still held significance. His office had the familiar scent of old books and floor polish. I sat in my usual leather chair, and he clicked his pen twice before speaking. What can I do for you, Mrs. Ellis? I want to change my will, I replied. His eyebrows rose slightly. Anything specific? I want to remove Paul and Diana as beneficiaries. He didn't react, just nodded and opened a drawer, and leave everything to Benjamin, my grandson. He looked up, all of it, every dime, I confirmed. Silence settled in, not awkward, but rather significant. He waited for an explanation, which I hadn't planned to give, but I did anyway. They've forgotten I'm a person, I said softly. Not just a wallet or an obligation, but a mother. I won't spend my remaining years pretending that kind of treatment is love. He nodded once, respectfully understanding. I signed and dated the papers, watching the notary stamp everything with a deliberate rhythm. It felt like a clean slate. Back home, I made a pot of lentil soup, no longer bothering to set two places. For years, I had done so out of habit, out of hope. One bowl, one spoon, one woman who finally felt in control again. That afternoon, I wrote a letter to Ben.
Dear Ben, if you're reading this, it means I finally remembered what my mother taught me at your age. Never give away more of yourself than you're willing to lose. I don't know how your parents will react to the will, but I need you to understand. This isn't revenge. It's a correction, a realignment. You've always treated me as if I mattered, and I want you to have something that reflects that. I also want you to know something else. They lied about your birthday party, told me not to come, not to bake. Gently and politely said I was no longer welcome. It hurt more than I expected, but it also awakened something in me. You don't have to fix this or choose sides, but I want you to know that real love isn't conditional.
It's neither quiet nor convenient. It's loud. It appears as you did. So I'm offering everything, not just money, but the tales behind it. Ask me about the photo album sometime. There's more to this house than just walls. With love, Grandma Maggie. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and tucked it into the back of my cookbook, the one he always wanted to use when we baked cookies. I'd give it to him in person soon, but not yet. That evening, I received a text from Diana. Paul said, "You're upset. I hope it's not about the cake. We've moved past that kind of thing. Hope you're doing well." I didn't reply because some matters require silence, while others, like legacy, memory, and dignity, demand action. Tomorrow I'd create a new list, not of debts or disappointments, but of what still mattered and who still did. On Friday morning, I found myself in the brightest corner of the living room, holding an old Polaroid of Ben at 7. He was dusted with flour, hands in the air, eyebrows raised, as if he'd discovered something wonderful in the mixing bowl. I had written a note on the back, "First batch of oatmeal cookies." He added cinnamon without asking. That was the year Diana banned him from sweets. I pulled out the photo album with the cracked green spine and flipped through it with steadier hands than I'd had in days. Each page contained something no one could rewrite. Birthday hats, burnt candles, aprons too large for small shoulders. Ben always stayed in the kitchen, even when the rest of the family wandered off to the TV or patio wine. He noticed things just like I did. I thought about the letter I wrote for him yesterday, tucked inside the cookbook, but now it seemed to need a companion. So I took out fresh stationery, the cream-colored kind with gold trim, and began writing again. Ben, I've been reflecting on our Tuesdays. Remember when I'd pick you up from school and we'd bake banana muffins, even when the bananas were overripe or the flour had lumps? I realize we haven't had a Tuesday like that in ages, but those moments still live within me. You didn't just eat my food. You made it alongside me, which means more than you might think. I want you to have that book. The recipes are all there, but so are the memories with pages smudged by vanilla and pencil notes suggesting more butter for next time. They're ours, not Diana's or your father's, just ours. If you ever feel lost, you'll find me within those pages. Love, Grandma Maggie. I folded the letter and tucked it between pages 34 and 35, nestled between the sugar cookies and lemon bars. Later that afternoon, I headed to the post office. My knees weren't thrilled about the walk, but I didn't mind. Movement is a form of rebellion, too, especially when the world expects you to sit still and fade away. The clerk smiled as she weighed the package. "Sending something sweet, something rich," I said, "and overdue." Back at home, I noticed a missed call from Paul and a voicemail. "Mom, look, Diana's been upset. She didn't mean to hurt you. You know how she is with food, very particular. Maybe we can have dinner next weekend. Just us. I'll call again later." No mention of Ben, no apology, just the usual half-hearted patchwork. I deleted the message around 6 p.m. The doorbell chimed, revealing Ben standing there with a backpack slung over one shoulder. He appeared taller than I remembered, his face lighting up as I opened the door. "Hi, Grandma," he said. I blinked in surprise. "Well, this is unexpected. I was nearby and thought I'd drop by. Is this a bad time?" "No," I replied, stepping aside. "This might be the best time." He entered, glancing around as he used to, taking in the pictures, the aroma of tea, and the faint radio background noise. "I found your note," he mentioned, pulling it from his coat pocket. "The one in the cookbook." "You already got it?" I asked. "I stopped by the post office. I know Linda, the clerk. She gave it to me early." I smiled. "That's cheating." "It's resourceful." He grinned. We settled in the kitchen, where the last rays of sunlight spread across the tiled floor like honey. I poured tea. He didn't request anything, but he noticed the cake tin on the counter. You baked? No reason, just habit. He opened it to find carrot cake, his other favorite. You remembered, he said. I never forget those who see me. He glanced down, suddenly uncertain. I don't know what they told you, but I didn't know about the party, about the message. If I had, I know, I interrupted. That's why I wrote to you. He took a bite of cake, then paused, holding the fork as if it were something sacred. You always make things better. No, I just stopped pretending they weren't broken. He stayed longer than I anticipated, asking about the flowers on the windowsill, the book I was reading. He helped me carry laundry upstairs without being asked, moving like someone raised with kindness, not control. When he left, he hugged me tightly, silently, genuinely, as he used to. After he left, I sat down, observing the unchanged kitchen, yet everything felt different. I was just beginning. The next morning, the house was still but not silent. There's a difference. Silence is when no one calls, when messages go unanswered, and the spaces around you feel accusatory. Stillness, however, is peace. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak. From my account, the creaking of old floorboards beneath my feet was familiar. I prepared oatmeal and enjoyed it on the back porch, wrapped in a shawl. The sky was soft and cloudy, and the breeze carried a hint of lilac from NY's yard. I reflected on the years spent waiting for invitations, acknowledgement, waiting for Paul to realize my love before Diana corrected him, waiting for birthdays that came with only a text. This kind of waiting makes you invisible, shrinking yourself to not intrude on their lives until you realize they no longer see you. After breakfast, I opened the large cedar chest in the spare room, untouched for years. Inside were items that once held significance: George's cufflinks, my wedding veil, Paul's baby blanket, Ben's kindergarten spelling certificate. I examined each item, questioning who we were then, what promises we'd made, and what we'd become. I found the quilt I started during chemo 12 years ago, with soft blues and greens, made from old shirts and curtains, memories stitched with hope. I stopped working on it when I went into remission, perhaps thinking I no longer needed it, but now it represented survival. I brought it downstairs, laying it out on the table, wrinkled, uneven, but honest. I ran my hands over the squares, pondering what still needed stitching. In the afternoon, Nancy visited with a tin of shortbread cookies. "You've been quiet," she remarked gently, as if I wasn't always quiet. "Everything all right?" she asked. "I think so," I replied, "just rearranging." "Furniture?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "No, expectations," I replied. Nancy chuckled, but didn't push further. Real friends give you space. We sat on the porch, sharing her cookies. She mentioned her daughter was taking her to the beach in April. I shared that I had finally canceled Paul's automatic withdrawals.
She didn't seem surprised, just patted my hand and said, "Took you long enough." That evening, I pulled out my notepad and made a different kind of list. Not of debts or grievances or who owed me what. This list was for me. Things that are still mine. My recipes, my home, my stories, my silence, my decisions, my name, my Sundays, my laughter when I choose to use it. I stared at the last line and underlined it twice. No calls came, no texts appeared. I didn't check or wait. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and sewed a new square onto the quilt, a piece of my old apron, the one stained with cocoa powder and cinnamon. I stitched it slowly and carefully. I wanted it to last. When I went to bed that night, I felt tired, but not drained. There's a difference. One is the world's doing. The other is your own choice. I chose this tiredness and slept well. On Sunday, Nancy brought over a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. No explanation. Just walked in like she used to, before Diana insisted guests call first. I told my daughter, "I'm not leaving until June," she said, placing the bottle down with a soft thud. She pouted, and I smiled. That's how we compromise now. We drank at the kitchen table, my table, the one Diana once called too cluttered. There was comfort in the clutter. Old coasters, a jar of buttons, a chipped saucer holding tea bags I might reuse. Nancy didn't mind. She never did.
"You know," she said, refilling our glasses, "for years, I thought you were just being nice." "I was," I said. "No, I mean, I thought you let them treat you like that because you didn't notice or care." I looked down at my wine, watching it cling to the glass. "I noticed," I said, "every time. I just didn't think I could speak up." Nancy nodded. "And now?" "Now I'm rewriting the rules." She smiled, a quiet one, the kind only old friends know how to give. "Well, about damn time." Later, after she left, I sat with her words like they were a new kind of fabric, soft yet strong. I had spent so many years folding myself into it, conforming to others' expectations. But what unfolds when you cease bending, when you simply stand still? I found myself gazing into the hallway mirror, the one I'd been avoiding recently. My reflection surprised me, not due to age. I've made peace with that, but because it looked familiar, like someone I once knew, someone with keen eyes and a firm mouth, someone who understood her value, even if no one acknowledged it. I briefly thought of our Arch, how he held my hand at Paul's high school graduation, whispering, "He gets that stubbornness from you." Back then, I didn't feel stubborn, just weary, constantly smoothing rough edges. If George had been here, things might have been different, perhaps not with Diana, who always had her own sharpness, but with Paul. He listened to and respected his father. I don't think he ever regarded me the same way after George was gone. But I remained. That night, I wrote in my notebook, "I am not a placeholder, not a background figure, not furniture in someone else's life. I am Margaret Ellis. I bake, I forgive, I remember, and I do not vanish." I slept with the window open, despite the cold. The air smelled of earth and wood smoke. I let it envelop me. At dawn, I baked a new cake, not for anyone else, but for myself, an orange almond bundt, simple, fragrant, a bit sharp on the tongue. I ate the first slice as the sun rose and thought, this is what healing tastes like. It doesn't need to be served on a silver tray, just served. Monday came and went without a word from Paul or Diana. By Tuesday evening, the silence became a constant companion, following me into every room, sitting with me as I read, and lingering as I worked on my quilt, a square from George's old flannel shirt, a soft, faded blue piece. In the past, I would have been anxious, reaching out to apologize for things I hadn't done, sending emails to clear misunderstandings that weren't mine. But now I brewed tea and allowed the silence to settle wherever it wanted. knowing I didn't need to make it comfortable. Midweek, I began clearing out the attic, not out of necessity, but because I needed it. There's a certain satisfaction in deciding what stays and what goes, in acknowledging that something once mattered, but no longer does. I found old linens, Christmas decorations, and boxes of items I didn't recall buying. And then, tucked in a tin labeled receipts, inside a yellowed envelope, were letters from Paul, real ones, written during his college days. 1 letter per month for nearly 2 years. Mom, thanks for the cookies. A girl in my dorm said they're better than her mom's. I miss the kitchen light. It's different here. Cold. You'd like my professor, Dr. Evans. He wears bow ties and swears in lectures. I sat on the attic floor, dust tickling my nose, my hands trembling slightly as I read each letter. I had forgotten his tenderness, forgotten that he once missed me. Something inside me broke, but not as it used to. This time, there were no tears, no aching. I simply folded the letters neatly and took them downstairs, placing them beside my notebook, a reminder that he once knew how to speak in his own voice. I wondered if that boy still existed somewhere within the man who allowed Diana to send that message. I wondered if he might ever reach out again, not for money or explanations, but simply to say, I see you now. That night, I wasn't waiting for anything. I didn't bother cooking. Instead, I opened a can of soup, toasted the end piece of bread, and ate at the kitchen counter with the radio playing softly in the background. Simple meals offer comfort, no performance, no presentation, just sustenance. After eating, I called the community center to see if they still needed volunteers for the Thursday baking class. Absolutely, the woman responded. You're Margaret Ellis, right? You used to bring cookies to the library. I did, and they'd be honored to have me. So I made room for something new, not as a substitute, but as a return. Thursday arrived, and I wore my old apron, the one Ben decorated with a cat in Sharpie when he was 4. Because you're always soft like cats, he had said. The class was filled with people who reminded me of my younger self, tentative hands and hesitant smiles. I taught them how to measure flour without packing it and to recognize when a cake is done by listening. You don't stab it, I laughed. You just lean in. A quiet cake is a finished cake. They laughed. They listened. Walking home, the street was quiet, yet alive. Porch lights glowed. A cat dashed across the sidewalk, and jazz played from a partly open window. The world was unchanged, but I wasn't. Inside, a voicemail awaited. Diana, I know you're upset, but it's unfair to punish everyone. Ben's still a child and shouldn't be caught in the middle. Let's talk. That word, unfair, lingered with me before I deleted the message. Some things don't merit a response. Ben showed up again on Saturday without notice, just the familiar rhythm of his knock, 3 quick taps and a pause. It was the same as when he was 10, sneaking in from the rain with a library book hidden under his jacket. I opened the door, and he smiled uncertainly, as if unsure of his welcome. You always knock like you're not sure I'll let you in, I said. I always hope you will, he replied. This time, he brought a small paper bag containing a jar of honey from the farmer's market and a note. For your tea, thought you might want it. A sweet treat that wasn't theirs sat on the table as I brewed 2 cups of tea. The honey was rich and floral, as thick as memory itself. He stirred his drink slowly, watching the swirls settle. "They're upset," he finally said. "My parents. It's not surprising. They think you're retaliating." I took a sip of my tea. "Is that what you think?" He looked at me, really looked, as if out of words. "No," he said. "I think you're reclaiming something." I nodded. That was a better term. He hesitated. "Dad said, you're changing the will." "I already did." He didn't flinch. "And I'm part of it?" "You are." Silence followed. I don't know what to say. "Then don't. Just know it wasn't a reward, but recognition." His eyes softened. "I'm not perfect, Grandma." "You were never meant to be." He leaned back. "They say you're trying to divide us." "Ben, I'm not building walls. I'm simply deciding where my door is and who gets a key." He glanced down at his mug. "I feel like I'm the only one who sees it clearly. The way they talk to you, the way they rewrite things. You see it because you lived with it. I just baked around it." He chuckled softly. "That's the most brutal sentence I've ever heard." "It's not brutal. It's honest." We didn't speak much after that. Sometimes the best conversations are those with nothing left to prove. He stayed for dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, and helped me fix the sticking screen door. Before he left, he paused at the door. "Can I come again next week? You don't need permission." "I think I do." "Then you have it, always." He hugged me again, longer and tighter, as if something had shifted permanently between us. After he left, I stood at the sink, washing dishes, watching the last light fade from the sky. There was a quiet within me that felt earned, not forced or empty. The phone rang once that evening. I didn't answer. I recognized the number and didn't need to hear the voice. Instead, I wrote another note in my notebook. He asked to return, not out of need, but simply because he wanted to things that matter and alter what remains. I switched off the kitchen light, sitting by the window. The night outside was alive with subtle sounds, wind, leaves, the soft murmur of the world turning. And within that murmur, I detected something else, not an apology, but respect. On Monday, I spread out all the birthday cards I had received from Paul since his marriage to Diana, 12 cards marking 12 years. Most were generic, featuring printed poems and hurried signatures. Only the first card included a personal note. "Thanks for always being there. Diana and I are lucky to have you." That was the year she still addressed me as Mrs. Ellis, before she began calling me Paul's mom in that careful tone used to mask her disdain. I placed the first card atop the stack, tied them with twine, not for keeping, but for returning. That afternoon, I contacted my lawyer once more, instructing him to draft a letter, a straightforward statement confirming the revised will addressed directly to Paul and Diana. No bitterness, no accusations, just facts. They would receive it by the week's end. I didn't want to surprise them, but neither did I wish to leave them with any misconceptions. That time had passed. Then I sat with my folder labeled Paul and Diana, making copies of bank statements, canceled checks, and emails requesting support. These weren't for court or contention. They were for clarity, for Ben. Because one day, when he questions why circumstances changed, I want him to have more than mere stories. I want him to have tangible truth. By evening, I was exhausted. I made tea and sat by the fire, a quilt across my knees, sewing the next square. This one was crafted from an old dish towel with faded sunflowers in the corner, still vibrant after all these years. The phone rang. It was Paul. I let it go to voicemail, but this time I listened. Mom, we got your letter. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't the way. Cutting us out over a cake, over one message. Diana's hurt. She feels attacked. I don't know what you want from us. Then, after a pause, I guess I thought you were above this. That phrase kept echoing in my mind. Above this, as if accepting silent disrespect with a grin was noble, as if letting myself be taken advantage of without objection was strength, as if love meant never letting down those who let me down. No, Paul, I'm not above this. I'm finally beyond that. I jotted down a note in my notebook. They'll tell their version. Let them. My truth exists in my actions, not my explanations. That evening, I retrieved the recipe box, which I hadn't opened since everything started. I leafed through cards, penned in my handwriting, ink fading, corners smudged, each one a memory, a ritual, a kindness. I paused at the chocolate birthday cake card, Paul's favorite, used every year until that message arrived. I took it out, not to bake, not yet, but to keep it visible. Some things shouldn't be hidden, especially when others dismiss them. Ben's message arrived on Thursday afternoon, just as I was pulling a pie from the oven. Grandma, I want to invite you to something small. No pressure. Come if you like. It's not theirs. It's mine, he wrote, attaching a photo of a handwritten invitation. Nothing formal, just black ink on cream paper. Saturday at 3, tea and sweets, you, me, and the pleasant kind of silence. I smiled so abruptly that it surprised me, the aroma of cinnamon and butter enveloping me, warm and untroubled. I left the pie to cool and sat at the table, the invitation still glowing on my phone. No explanations, no performance, just an invitation. Saturday arrived with unexpected sunshine for April, gentle and filtering through the clouds. I wore a navy cardigan with mother-of-pearl buttons and packed a tin of lemon scones I'd baked that morning. Simple, just flour and care. Ben greeted me at the door. He'd rented the back room of a small bookshop near the library, one of those hidden spots that smell of paper and time. The room had a few tables, scattered chairs, a string of lights overhead, and a cake. Not mine, but almost. A chocolate cake sat at Thea's center, homemade a bit, uneven, coated with something thick and shiny. I made it, Ben said, observing my reaction. You did? I used your recipe, the one in the blue box, page 9. I felt my breath catch. It's not perfect, he quickly added. It sank a little. It rose enough, I replied. We sat, silently. No speeches, no forced smiles, just a table, 2 cups of tea, and a silence that gave space, not judgment. After a while, he said, I wanted this to be just us, not a statement or a stand. It doesn't need to be anything, I responded. It already means everything. He nodded. I told them I invited you. Mom said I was being dramatic. Dad just looked tired. I imagine he is. They're losing their grip on the version of me they've created. I smiled faintly. They'll survive. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the cookbook I had given him, the old one with flour still in the creases, and placed it between us. I keep this on my shelf next to the photos from when I believed everyone was good, And now I think people are complex, but I know who makes me feel complete. There was nothing more to say. I reached out, touched the corner of the book, then his hand. Small things, steady things. Before I left, he cut 2 slices of the cake and packed one for me. For later, he said. When I got home, I didn't eat it right away. I set it on the counter, let it sit, let it exist, because this wasn't about being accepted. It was about being remembered. Sunday evening brought an unexpected knock. Not Ben's, not NY's, but Paul. I saw him through the front window before opening the door, alone, holding nothing, no flowers, no excuses, just a furrowed brow and the look of a man not summoned. I opened the door without a word. "Can I come in?" he asked. "That depends," I said. "Is this a visit or a performance?" He flinched. "A visit, I think." I stepped aside. He sat stiffly on the living room couch, hands on his knees, like a schoolboy waiting for a lecture. I didn't offer tea, didn't sit. I stood by the window, hands lightly clasped, watching. The final light gathered in the corners as I noticed Ben's post. He started, asking which cake I had baked again. I replied that I never stopped baking. He looked up and asked why I hadn't told him how much I was hurt. I explained that I did. In every quiet yes I gave. Every time I showed up despite being told not to. And in every warm slice of cake, he didn't notice. He exhaled and mentioned that I changed the will. I had to, I said, because I want what I leave behind to reflect what I gave and who reciprocated. Paul rubbed his temples, saying I raised him to be better than this. I replied that I raised him with love, and being better was always his choice. He seemed diminished, not quite a boy or a man, just burdened by a long-ignored truth. I didn't know how bad it had gotten, he admitted quietly, and I responded, "You didn't want to know." He didn't argue. "I told Diana not to send that message," he muttered. "She said it was easier than telling me in person I wasn't wanted." He grew silent. "I didn't come here to fight," he finally said. "I just wanted to see if it's too late." I considered that. Too late isn't a door slamming. It's a door slowly closing after being wide open for years with no one entering. "It's not too late to speak," I said, "but it might be too late to speak for both of you." He really looked at me, much like Ben had. "I miss the kitchen," he said softly. "I know," I replied. "I miss when it was easy." "It was never easy. It was just quiet," I told him. He nodded. "I think I've been quiet too long and polite too long," he admitted as he stood. "I'm sorry." I didn't rush to accept it, letting it sit between us, heavy and real. "Then let your actions be the apology," I said. He nodded. "I'll try," he promised. Before leaving, he hesitated at the door. "Do you want to come next week? Just dinner, just us." "I'll think about it," I replied, the most honest answer I could give. After he left, I sat in the silence he left behind. It didn't ache or accuse. It just existed, and that finally felt like something I could live with. I didn't call him back, didn't text, didn't mark my calendar for the week of the dinner. The invitation lingered in the air like a coat draped on a chair, visible and familiar, yet not quite mine to bear. I continued my routine, quilting, reading, and volunteering at the baking class. One young woman was moved to tears by her first successful sponge cake. "It's not just a cake," she whispered. "It's something I created." I nodded in understanding. On Friday, I visited the market and bought apricots, something I hadn't done in years. Diana always said they made the kitchen smell too nostalgic, but I loved that aroma. Apricots mixed with brown sugar and a touch of something old and tender in the air. I made jam, filled 3 small jars, and labeled them with quiet satisfaction, Ellis Apricot 2025. I stored 1 jar in the cupboard, gave 1 to Nancy, and saved 1 for Ben. I didn't tell Paul. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze. I wore my simple dress with tiny birds on the hem and waited until 5 p.m., 2 hours past dinner. He hadn't followed up or reminded me. At 5:15, the phone rang. "Hi, Mom," Paul greeted. "Hello, Paul. I wasn't sure if you were coming. You didn't check if I was free." Silence followed. "We still have food," he said. "Diana made that quinoa salad you once liked." "I never liked it." "Oh, anything else?" "I just wanted to talk again." "Then talk." He hesitated, and I could hear cutlery clattering, Ben's muffled voice, and Diana saying something sharp. "You know," he said slowly, "I used to think you'd always be there." I was. I mean, no matter what. That's not love, Paul. That's assumption. More silence ensued before he spoke the words I hadn't anticipated. "She doesn't like how you remind me of who I used to be." I sat down. "Then she should have married someone else. She liked that version of me when it was convenient, and now she finds him troublesome." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry, so I did neither. "I want you to know," he continued, "that I remember the real things. Not just the arguments, but the warmth, the cinnamon, the birthdays, the times you said yes before I even asked. I remember too. I think I lost you while trying." To avoid losing her, you don't need to choose Paul. You simply need to see things clearly. He took a deep breath. "I want to visit. Just me. No agenda," he said. "Then come as you are. No need to explain or defend. Just arrive." "I will," he replied. We ended the call, and I sat at my table with the apricot jam cooling beside me, the quiet settling in like an old friend. It wasn't a resolution yet, but it was a start, and beginnings can be the most honest things we have. He arrived on Sunday without any fuss, just Paul carrying a grocery bag with 2 apples and a loaf of bread from the pricey bakery near their home. His shirt was untucked and his eyes were uncertain. "I didn't know what to bring," he admitted. "You didn't have to bring anything," I assured him. He stepped inside. It had been years since he'd been here without Diana, maybe since Ben was in middle school. The house appeared the same, but I could see him noticing the changes. The extra quilt on the couch, the baking tins on the shelf, the missing family photo from the mantel. I didn't offer tea, but he followed me into the kitchen anyway, setting the bread down with a sigh. "I've been thinking," he said, "about everything. The money, the cake, the will." I let him speak. "I think I got used to you bending, to you always saying yes. I got used to disappearing," he admitted, looking up. "Yeah, I did." He sat in the chair across from mine, the same one he used to sit in at 10, sulking over math homework. "I used to love your cooking," he said. "Diana said it was too heavy, so I stopped asking for it." "I know," I replied as he rubbed his hands together. "I didn't realize how far we drifted." "We didn't drift, Paul. You built fences and expected me to knock before entering." He blinked. "I kept knocking until I stopped," I continued. He looked ashamed, but it wasn't an act. It was genuine and weary. I let the silence linger. "She says you've poisoned Ben," he added. I raised an eyebrow. Is that what she thinks love is? She sees any difference as rebellion. Then she's not ready for the truth, he acknowledged, nodding slowly. I've let her shape too much of the story. You remained silent because it was simpler. Was it worth it? No. He glanced down at the table, and I reached over to slide the recipe card towards him, the chocolate cake he adored before silence became the norm. He took it carefully, as if it were something delicate. Can I come back sometime? He asked. You just did, I replied. He smiled faintly, but it was enough. Before he left, I handed him a jar of apricot jam. Tell her it's from the market if you need to, I said. He laughed, the sound unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Will you come to dinner next month? He inquired. Just you and me, he added. I'll think about it, I said. That was our agreement. No automatic expectations, just clear choices. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry or hope. I simply stood in the quiet and felt something settle. Not closure or forgiveness, but clarity, and that was finally enough. A week went by, then another. I baked, quilted, and taught a gingerbread class that ended with 3 grown women in tears, not over the dough, but because it was the first thing they'd made that received a genuine compliment. Ben started visiting every Thursday without announcement or hesitation. Once he brought coffee, but forgot the sugar, laughed at himself, and drank it bitter to prove he could. I made pancakes and told him there was no need to prove anything here. Nancy and I sat in the garden, discussing death, not morbidly, just honestly, about what we'd leave behind and what would outlast us. Not things, she said, just gestures and the people who notice them. Paul texted twice, not demanding anything, just sharing small updates. I'm planning dahlias this year, he mentioned. Ben helped me fix the garage light, I replied once. It felt right. Diana never called, and I stopped wondering if she would. Some women aren't built for softness, but expect it from others, and when you stop offering it, they call it war. Let her. My silence isn't an attack, it's a response. I updated my will again, not legally, just in spirit. I wrote a letter to Ben to be read after I'm gone and placed it under the recipe. Box folded with care. If you're reading this, it means the world kept turning as it should. By now, you know who you are and what you've done with what I left. I don't mind if you spent the money. I care if you remember its origin. I don't mind if you change the curtains. I care if the kitchen still carries a warm scent. Don't let them change who I was. I wasn't angry, just awake. I wasn't bitter, simply finished. And I wasn't vengeful, only honest. Live similarly. That's all I wish for. Last Sunday, I sat on the porch, quilt over my knees, watching neighborhood kids play. One girl, with crooked pigtails and scraped knees, ran by and called, "Hi, baking lady." I laughed and waved, but she was gone before I could ask her name. I'll bake cookies next week, just in case she returns. Sometimes kindness resonates, and dignity is passed like flour through a sieve, light and patient. I gave my life in handfuls. Some said it was too much, but that's only because they never measured what they took. I am 79 years old and have lived through hunger, grief, and silence, but also joy, cinnamon, and voices that soften when they say my name. This story didn't end as I imagined. It ended better, with me whole. So if you're reading this and have ever felt erased or overlooked, don't wait for permission to matter. Stand up, Speak calmly. Reclaim your space. And if you've ever baked for someone who didn't thank you, do it again, but this time for yourself. If this story moved you, if you saw your mother, friend, or yourself in it, leave a comment, share it, and let someone else know they're not alone. The quiet ones have voices too.